Traditionally, marketing and finance have worked in silos. They were separate entities. Some would go as far as to call them frenemies. But recent trends have brought about a collaboration between the CMO and the CFO that is reshaping brands and businesses. This dynamic alliance between chief marketing officers and chief financial officers can have a profound impact on organizations in today's complex world. The partnership has emerged as a game-changing force driving success and growth. But what does it take to converge? What does the real-world impact of a true partnership look like? To find out how to forge the CMO-CFO alliance and firmly put brands and businesses on the path to sustainable growth, we've got a power partnership from one of the biggest vehicle manufacturers in the world. We have Shubhranshu Singh, Vice President and CMO of Tata Motors Commercial Vehicle Business Unit, and joining him today is his CFO, Ramanan, Vice President and CFO of Tata Motors CVBU. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So, straight off the bat, I'm going to ask you sort of to dig in to, the first time that you all met. What were your first impressions of each other and of each other's functions? Ramanan, I'm going to come to you first. What was your first impression?
I think my first impression of Shubhranshu was I realized he's managing an area which I probably didn't have much views on, right? And something that I probably would want to partner with him and learn from him. And I've always looked up to him as someone who's intellectually brilliant, right? So there's lots to learn from him.
And Shubhranshu?
I met Ramanan soon after I joined. I've been here just short of 2 years. He was already in situ, he was in the business, and he became our VP Finance. And that was a time when we were also getting into budgeting. And so I had to kick the ball off with him and get into a very elaborate exercise to define priorities. I was also new to the business, and I think the chemistry worked right up front. Ramanan is a man of few words, but golden words. So I think we were able to find that working equation very soon into our respective stints. And I think broadly in this stint, he and I have been almost co-terminus, is roughly the same period of time we have served in our respective capacities.
I'll come to the chemistry bit in a while, but let me get some historical context in your first. How have you seen the role of the CMO and CFO evolve? And perhaps you both could take that question. Ramanan, I'll come to you first. How have you seen the role evolve over time, given your vast experience across companies and sectors?
Yeah, so if I look at this historically, both these functions actually worked pretty much in silos, right? They never thought there is anything common that they can work on. Finance always thought that marketing is a budget guzzler, right? And marketing always thought finance never understood what brand means. But I think over the years, what is happening is both these functions are able to find a common ground. They both understand that they are both enablers. They have to enable the business growth, profitable growth. So, and everything is measurable. Unlike in the past, it was more of a budget versus actuals kind of a situation in spend. But now it is all about how can I do more with less? Whether it's about any digital sales conversions that we are kind of attempting to do and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of common ground that the two functions have figured out in my mind.
And Shubhranshu, your quick take on some of the historical context here, given again your experience, you've previously worked across sectors. What's your take on how the relationship and the partnership has evolved?
Yes, I think the partnership is an essential partnership. It is stereotyped as the battle between logic and magic, between creativity and number crunching. But my take is that if you hybridize it, if there is logical creativity and creative logic, then you come to a meeting point. My early training was with Hindustan Lever, where I served for a span of 12 years. And as category marketing head, you are also by default the P&L owner. And there you have to not only have a working relationship with finance, they are embedded in your working team. So my early training did not make me see them as the other. And I think if you carry that sentiment into no matter what segment or industry you're serving, you have to realize that the financial truth that is spoken is essential to business. And the creative act of nurturing a brand or giving it strength also should eventually result in better finances and in better business momentum. So I don't necessarily see conflict inherent in the situation. And to Ramanan's point, I think it has evolved over a period in time where greater availability of data, real-time data, the migration to digital, etc., is allowing us to see each other's reality in clearer terms.
Absolutely. So let me just sort of zoom out a little bit and ask you if you were to sort of give me the quick recipe, the short recipe on what does it really take to converge? What does it really take to forge this alliance? What's your sort of quick recipe on that?
So firstly, I think getting to know the person is important. If you only talk designation to designation, you will be living the stereotype. I think personal chemistry certainly helps, but one should not rely only on two people liking each other before their respective functions can work in sync. But I think the trust that I respect his expertise and his position and vice versa, that itself allows you to open doors. Marketing has a continuous need to swim more upstream and realize from his vantage point what the business is prioritizing, what is the business ask. And correspondingly, we must be able to handhold finance to swim downstream and see the consumer reality and walk in consumer shoes. And I believe Ramanan and I are doing that, whether it is jointly conducted market visits or me paraphrasing and explaining the consumer research output. And of course, in our business, we have a very structured way in which we meet as a group, not only him and I, but also the larger team of business unit heads, etc. And I think that structure and that cadence of meetings also allows us to have a shared sense of reality.
And Ramanan, your take on how you forge this alliance?
So I think in addition to what Shubhranshu shared, the other piece which is also very important is, I think, the individual needs to be extremely secure at heart, right? He should be very clear about what is the competency he brings to the table. If you look at it, can Shubhranshu replace me or I can replace Shubhranshu? That's never going to happen because each one of us have our own core strengths. But how is it that we collaborate and get the best result for the company? I think that's the piece we need to kind of focus on. So in my mind, self-awareness, what is it that you can do? And also not being very insecure at heart, I think that's going to be very, very important for this chemistry to work in my mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. Shubhranshu mentioned something about, you having these sort of first-hand experiences with market visits. Anything you can share on that and how that has perhaps changed your perspective on the marketing function and having that sort of insight into your customers and how they use your products and services?
I think thanks to him and my leaders who've been kind of pushing me to get into the market, right? And I think it's important, and as I've started doing some of these market visits and different regions and things, there's a much deeper appreciation of what is happening on the ground. Otherwise, generally you're sitting in an ivory tower and kind of making certain decisions without really knowing what is going on the ground. I think this is helping me from that perspective. We visited a couple of regions together. So I do some of the markets on my own, go meet customers. There are some who are extremely happy. There are some who have a mouthful to give, right? So it's important to kind of hear them out and come back to come to the drawing board and see how do we recalibrate ourselves. And I think that is important. There's so much of campaign that he does. So I even try to do a dip test on the ground to say, okay, have you seen this? Is this working? Because that's my way of probably getting my own lens on evaluating how things are happening.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to again sort of go back to sort of a macro question here and ask you both about some of the key factors that have led and perhaps made this partnership even more important in terms of driving business growth. Shubhranshu, I'll come to you first. What are some of the things that led to it?
So in this business, what we are seeking to achieve is to continue the pioneering and leadership role that Tata Motors has played in creating the commercial vehicles industry. It is an iconic brand. It is also a Tata brand in the sense Tata first. When people talk to each other in their regional languages, they say, I bought a Tata vehicle. And so 155 years of leadership with trust, nation building, pioneering, all of that comes fully into our brand promise as well. And at the same time, our competitors are segment specific and very focused. So we have a plethora of brands which are also competing in their respective segments. So we are trying to address segments, we are trying to address the richness of content to be able to showcase the many technical facets and features that are unique to Tata Motors. And we want all of this to funnel up to the mother brand so as to give it greater strength and momentum. In doing that, in the last year, Ramanan and I have partnered actively to be able to push more of digitally sourced sales. We have done that where influencer content and building a cadre of influencers to work along with us is concerned. We've also tried to do that on a number of small projects. Some of them are already in the public domain, others which are due to happen, where we are trying to experiment on scale and are making the necessary resource and investment happen so that it can come to fruition. So in that sense, the partnership is an important one, and it has developed because we are seeing green shoots or actually the fruits of our labor come through. And it's been very encouraging to see him, appreciate the business reality, appreciate the consumer truth, and then look at what it takes to make it happen, particularly in terms of budgets, etc.
Ramanan, I'll ask you the same thing, but keeping in mind, of course, today's very complex and competitive business landscape. So keeping that in mind, what are the key factors, again, that have driven the importance of this alliance in your group?
See, I think today what is happening, the underlying factor and everything, as a finance guy, if I look at it, is the first principle is resources are not unlimited, right? So you've got a kitty, you'll have to see how can I do more with less and how can I be more effective. And if I look at the business outcome, if there is an action which is going to help me improve my market share, if there's going to be an action that's going to improve the brand presence for the company, if there is an action that is going to help us secure more sale at a much lower cost, I think that's money well spent. So I think these are, I would say, some of the finance way of looking at things. How do I get more realization for the buck that is spent? And that's where I think we find a common ground. And many times if certain things are experimental initiatives, we go as a pilot first, right? There's a kitty, we say, okay, even if this burns out, that's fine. But if it gives good results, then I think there's a lot more confidence to fund it and scale it up, because the results are tangible. I think that's the way we kind of evaluate it.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something about confidence, and you also spoke about trust earlier. But let me now ask you, you mentioned a couple of things on the digital front and influencer marketing. Can you share a few more perhaps real-world examples of how this partnership has led to very effective business outcomes? You're essentially connecting the dots here between your marketing actions and your business outcomes. So perhaps an example that gives us a sense of how it actually works.
So let me kick that off. I went to Ramanan with a series of proposals on how to ramp up our digital sales, as I mentioned. This is already a motivation that was alive. We wanted to do more on it. But as you know, digital sales does not only mean the access to having somebody filling up a form and then taking it all the way through to eventual retail. It needs communication. It needs the ability to market and remarket. It needs the ability to identify the right cohort and serve them with the right content. And all of these things requires both a back-end infrastructure in terms of analytics, in terms of having the right partnerships. So it entails bringing in the right expertise, whether internally or outside, setting up a team in place, making the investments to have a regular cadence of outgoing messages and seeing whether they're converting at a steady clip into retail, eventual retails through form fills. We already had a CRM system which categorizes the various levels of interest from a prospect all the way to the final sale. He and I, along with our head of sales, had a cadence of meetings where we were seeing, what's the volume of content converting into actual retail. So what's the cost per lead? What's the cost per retail? Are we set up to be able to filter these? Are we equipped in terms of our call centers to handle the click-to-call volume? All of these were iterated repeatedly for about the first 6 months till we saw that it's on a steady course, and it could not have been done without, because we were carving out a budget to be able to do that. So that's where our engagement was fairly steady and also in a problem-solving mode.
And I think that was important because if you look at it, it's very easy to trigger interest. How do you sustain it? If you're going to be bombarded with over 1 million inquiries, if you're not going to be servicing it, if you don't have the right back-end infrastructure to service it, then later any further campaigns, people would never want to go click on it again. And I think that's how we kind of work together as a team and aligned. And it was good. Wherever we had to pull in the other subject matter experts, we did that. And the pilot was successful. We've been able to scale it up also.
On that note, we'll take a quick commercial break and come back to talk about how the CMO CFO Alliance can transform organizations and deliver sustainable triumph for brands.